Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Katie and today is an upgrade kind of day. It is April and we are on box number 20, so let's get in, shall we? This month's featured artist is Tikuva Illustrates and we have a very nice underwater scene. But before we get into things, please make sure you have subscribed and have those notifications switched on for more videos like this. So, as you can see on screen, we have coloured pencils, we have a alcohol marker, a fine pen and a beautiful pad of paper. We also have the battle post and I'll flick through that on screen so you guys can have a look there. The paper we have this month is Shut and it is part of the Clairefontaine brand. It is a medium grain paper and it is 180 GSM. It's got quite a nice tooth to it, which is pretty good considering we have coloured pencils this month. We also have a loop fine liner in 0.1 and a Spectrum Noir alcohol marker in the colour cyan. Now, speaking of Spectrum Noir, we happen to have some Spectrum Noir coloured pencils which I have never used before. These are the Colour Blend 12 pencil set and the colour scheme is Bold Bright, and I will tell you what is in there. We have Dusty Pink, Ladybug, Goldfinch, Bumblebee, Wineberry, Icicle, Seagrass, Lagoon, Smooth Jade, Amethyst, Indigo and Orchid. Those are gorgeous colour names and I quite like the fact that they've given them names instead of being literal about things. Sometimes it's nice to have fun. Also, the colour scheme itself is gorgeous and I am getting a lot of aqua vibes here, which is kind of in fitting with this month's upgrade battle, and that is Underwater Paradise. But let's just talk about these coloured pencils for a moment. So they went on the paper really smoothly. They were quite nice to blend. I didn't blend them all into one another. I just thought I'd blend a few in as I was going along. And they had a really good colour payoff. I mean, I'm not an expert in coloured pencils. It's not something I use all the time, but I was quite pleased with these. And I think they were a good match with the paper. They also layered on top of that marker really nicely. Now it's time to work on a quick design, so I thought we will make a personification of the prompt Underwater Paradise. I thought I would create a sea spirit and have some of those gorgeous corals which are inspired from the featured artist postcard, as well as hiding a few other fish in there. So from that little sketch that you saw on my sketch pad, I ended up drawing this. This ended up being a little bit more epic than I planned, but I'm kind of glad I went down that route. I did use a pencil that was not included in this box, but it's not cheating because it came in last month's box and I didn't want to use a coloured pencil to draw everything out in. So I'm just going to stick with that. And after I'd sketched it out, as you can see on screen now, it is time to add that liner pen. I thought we might have a few problems here with the liner pen on this type of paper, but I was actually really impressed. Usually when a paper has a little bit of tooth to it, that usually indicates that a fine nib is going to just turn into a fine knob and it'll just be ground down into nothing, but I didn't experience this on here. I was also impressed by how well the ink sat on the paper, and that includes this pen as well as the marker pen. Now, I did notice that the marker did bleed through the page, but it didn't go onto the sheets behind it. But if you've got this box, I'd just take that into consideration and stick a sheet of paper in between. But aside from that, yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by how well this ink sat on the page. Now, obviously, we have a lot of blues here, so I blocked in the background with the blue, and yes, we have a nice sort of circular halo behind our character here. I decided to continue that blue into our character's hair, and I guess you could say I've colour blocked off a lot here, but it did mention in the magazine how the artist would use an alcohol marker to get a big base colour down and then work over the top with those coloured pencils. So that is exactly what I did here. I left a few areas white for highlights of the hair, but aside from that, the majority of it I just went straight in there with that blue. Now, you know I have a bit of a problem with Spectrum Noir markers, with the nibs absolutely just running ragged, but again, they really do seem to have improved things, so I might have to just let that one go. Combined with the grittiness of the paper, yeah, that pen held up well, so I can't grumble. Using the Lagoon Blue, I just tried to incorporate a little bit of depth in there and just work on a slight gradient before introducing other colours in there. I found the seagrass was really good for adding the very deep textures of hair, that's the best way I can describe it. And it also allowed there to be a flow of direction as well. I didn't really want to rely on the black pen for any more details. I think what I'd already lined out was enough, so using these coloured pencils was ideal. One thing to note is to keep your pencil sharp when doing those fine lines. A blunt pencil won't draw a fine line very easily. I also noticed with the softness of these leads that these guys went down quick. But that's not a bad thing. Once I lost that pointed end on the coloured pencil, I would just go on an area where I needed a thicker coverage or a wider coverage, and then when I had reached my limit with that, I'd sharpen it, and that would be the most efficient way I'd use these. I wanted to introduce some other colours into the hair, so using those purpley pink colours were absolutely ideal for this. It's also again allowed to just elaborate a little bit more on the outlines of the hair, just sort of give a bit more of an impression of the direction it's going in and the flow, as well as adding in some of those tonal variations. I actually quite liked working in coloured pencil. It's not a medium I use very often on this channel because it really does take a long time to do and a long time to film. There's a lot of building up layers, and thank goodness it came with that marker pen, so a lot of the hard work was done there. But I don't use it very often on this channel, just simply because it takes a long time. But that's not to say I don't like using them. I think it's one of those mediums where I just need to sit down, I need to be comfortable because I'm going to be there for a while. This picture took about 2 hours from start to finish, which is about as much as I could cope with under the camera. It is getting quite hot on there at the moment. It was time to add a pop of a different colour, which is where those gorgeous yellow tones come in, and the goldfinch and bumblebee colour were perfect for these fish. I also wanted to just add a little bit of depth there, which is where that dusty pink and ladybug came in very handy. I also wanted a really good contrast for the coral on our character's head, so first of all I layered it with the bumblebee. Then adding a slight gradient with the dusty pink, followed by a further gradient with the ladybug, just creating a red to yellow gradation there. To tie everything in and to slightly burnish it, I went over the whole lot in goldfinch, and then on the outline of the coral went around in that ladybug. I really had to make sure that that red pencil was sharpened to do that. I can't tell you how many times I had to sharpen it just to make sure that outline remained relatively consistent, but I am really happy. It kind of just makes that coral pop. Once I'd finished that, it was time to do something about that white circle in the background. I liked it at first, but I wasn't quite gelling with it, so I decided to add the colour Smooth Jade just to fill in that gap, and I really quite like how that planned out. It wasn't this stark white background, it was just a nice in-keeping colour there. But I still had to keep making sure it was sharp. I must admit, these are quite possibly some of the softest coloured pencils I have used for a very, very long time, and I like to use the Prismacolor and the Faber-Castell Polychromos, but these were like butter. They were absolutely lovely to work with. I was really happy with how they layered on top of each other as well as on top of that marker pen. I liked how some of the colours, and I know this isn't the right terminology, but some of them seemed really opaque and some of them just had a slight transparency about them, so they were nice to layer. I didn't feel like I was overloading any areas either, and I'm sure you've heard before how heavy-handed I say I am, and I really am. But I didn't feel like the leads were breaking unnecessarily or the paper was just rejecting the pigments I was putting down, so yeah, I was really impressed with this. I just added a slight bit of colour to her face using the dusty pink and that bumblebee just to try and get a skin tone, as well as using the dusty pink and ladybird to add in her lips. And I know I said ladybird, we call ladybugs ladybirds in the UK, just so you know. Anyway, we are all done. I really enjoyed this box. I really like the piece I've done with it, and I'm really happy. I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of this. Of course, I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments, especially if you're still here at this point. And of course, if any of you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button so you will have more videos like these to watch in the future. I would just like to say a massive thank you for watching, and I do hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful if you're struggling with your box, or if you're just drawing along with me. Anyway, you lovely lot, I will see you on the next video. Bye!